Good morning, good afternoon, everybody. Hope everyone's doing great today. My name is Pratik, and today I'm going to talk about outcome-based product management. How can we think about outcomes? How can we build products for our community, for our customers, which they really love, and which changes their life, their behavior, and it helps them achieve the goal which they had, which in theory is the outcome while continuing to understand the difference between outcome and output. So I'm really excited to talk with all of you on this path. So let's get started. A little bit about me before we jump into the details. I currently work at Airbnb. I am the global product lead here. I've joined the company a few months ago, and prior to that, I've worked in various industries. A few years ago, I started working as a research analyst in the Clean Technology Innovation Program at STSU Research Foundation. That's also the university where I got my master's in business. And the goal of that role was to help commercialize clean technology products. And that was actually also my foray into product management and learning about why products matter, how to build them, what impact they should have. And with that said, I worked there for a few years, moved out to the East Coast. I worked in the automotive sector as a senior product manager at General Motors and Ford Motor Company. I helped build out their global customer experience platforms and voice of customer programs. That actually led me to wanting to be more and more closer to the customer. So I changed industries, moved into e-commerce, and I worked at Overstock.com for a few years. I was the director of product at Overstock and led their customer care, loyalty, and financial services platforms. And then, which brought me to my current role now at Airbnb. So I've been doing this for a few years, and I'm really excited to take you all through the journey of outcome-based product management. I am an engineer by heart and by my undergrad. I'm an electrical engineer. And the one thing which I am really passionate about is thinking big and focusing on customer problems. As product managers, a lot of times we get bogged into the individual metrics of a feature, which becomes a very internal focused thinking. And what I want to teach you all today is how we can take that thinking but apply it to customer problems, and then take those customer problems and apply and bring in behavior changes in the customers when they use our products, and then which eventually achieves an outcome which they are really wanting to do. So we will go through a few items today. Here's the agenda. We will understand what exactly an outcome is. How can we think about it? We will talk about a jobs to be done framework. We will also discuss the build trap. As product development teams, as agile software development teams, we tend to run into this problem a lot. And we will understand what that problem is and how can we help our product teams, our engineering teams, our design teams, our research teams to not fall into the build trap. And then we will come together and build a strategy on how this makes sense, how you all as product managers can implement this thinking, which is based on outcome, and build products which your customers love and adore. So the first item which we're going to talk about is outcome, like the title of the presentation and the discussion. What is an outcome? Why do we build products? Is it really to achieve a result which your manager has told you to? Is it something which you're doing because your leadership team within the company is trying to achieve? Is it just to execute on an idea? Or is it just to write amazing code? You know, that's always possible. As engineers and as product managers, we can write some amazing code, which can then lead to a pretty awesome feature. But is that really why we build products? Probably not. In reality, as a product manager, your job is to build products which solves somebody's problem. So, in simple terms, as I have it on the screen here, we build products to solve a problem which somebody is having somewhere. We think as product managers that we can solve it, but how do we measure it? Our solving the problem should lead to changing the behavior of this somebody after they use the product. So if the product which you have built is not leading to changing behavior, then it probably means that you've achieved an outcome, but you have achieved an output, but you have not achieved an outcome which you were going for. And you probably have still a long way to go to get there. And we'll figure out how to get there. So I always tell this to my teams that product manager are not part of delivery teams. Yeah, we think of them as delivering products, deploying code. We have multiple iterations of a feature launch. But at the end of the day, we have problem-solving teams. Product managers are not delivery teams. Their job is not just to deliver a bunch of features and hope that it works, because then it means that we'll just, essentially solve problems for nobody. And maybe that's not the right way to do it. So when you achieve this outcome of changing in human behavior, which then leads to results, that's what you're trying to do when you're building products. And the drive results part is very important. So think of it this way. Think of yourself. Let's say you were a product manager for a company's loyalty program. And the goal of the loyalty program is what? The goal of the program in itself, the product loyalty, is to drive more subscriptions, to lead to more renewals, to lead to customers using the different benefits or the features which come with the loyalty program. Think of Amazon Prime or think of Costco. These are all loyalty programs, right? Where you are using 3 features of 5 and the company wants you to use 2 more. Or your subscription is about to expire and the company, in this case, let's say Amazon or Costco, they want you to go and renew your membership in the Prime membership or Costco membership. That's great. But now if you really take a step back and think about it, what you just achieved is actually not a change necessarily in human behavior. You have achieved what you can call it as an internal metric, which is Costco might say, we have increased our membership number by X%, or another Amazon might say, or and for that matter, any loyalty program owner can say that, hey, we have more members than we had last year or last month, year over year, month over month, which is great. That's a great output. But do we know why? Do we know why somebody is renewing the membership? That why is the change in the human behavior. If you can really understand what that why is, that's the result which you want to drive. That's the outcome that you want to achieve. So in theory, for coming back to the loyalty program example, if you were to drive a change in human behavior, the outcome that you achieved is that I love this particular program. I will come back. I will continue to renew, which will then lead to me buying more using this platform or using this loyalty membership, coming back to the store more often, telling my friends and family to go and enroll in the Costco membership or in the Amazon Prime, or for that matter, any other loyalty program. So that's the outcome which you're trying to achieve. Let's take another example. I'm going to say a lot of people have vehicles, have cars. This is something which I learned in my work when I was working at General Motors. Now, if the service teams at a dealership, if they're trying to reduce the time it takes to change the oil or tire rotations or for that matter, just a regular scheduled service. That's great. But will that lead to a customer coming back to the same dealership and continuing to use that service program again in future? If the answer is yes, then that's a behavior change that you have achieved. And the product manager for the service layout would think of it that, hey, the individual outputs which we have driven, which is reduction in time to change the oil, reduction in waiting time, reduction in time to service the vehicle, providing a clean car when the customer comes back to pick it up. All of those are individual outputs. All of those outputs add up and then lead to an outcome, which is repurchase, which is essentially a customer coming back to the same dealership and trying to solve the so essentially continuing to renew their membership. That's the outcome which we are trying to achieve. So again, like as a product manager, what you should be doing is building to achieve an outcome which is achieved by individual outputs. So the next question arises that, okay, all of this is great. How do we do it? So this is how we think about it. I'm going to talk about this framework, which is called Jobs to be Done framework. But before we get started into that, I'm going to give an example of McDonald's milkshake. So Clayton Christensen, the guru of Agile, really respect him. And this is something which I learned a few years ago where as product managers, you really need to think of what job you're hiring the product to do. So the McDonald's milkshake example is interesting. A few years ago, some of the research team members were trying to understand why people buy the McDonald's milkshake, because McDonald's had asked them to figure out a way to increase their milkshake sales, right? So the team spent hours outside various McDonald's locations, talked with customers, and literally asked them why did they buy a milkshake, observed their pattern, and based on some of the initial research numbers, McDonald's actually changed a ton of things in their milkshake. They changed the flavors, they changed the size of the milkshake, they changed the thickness of the shake itself, they changed the diameter of the straw, which you use to drink the milkshake. But what happened was nobody really figured out what the McDonald's milkshake was doing for the customers, because everything which McDonald's did was, again, very focused on the milkshake itself. It was essentially looking at the solution and trying to come up with various variations of the solution which already exists, which is the milkshake. But when there were more and more conversations with actual people who were coming into McDonald's location in the morning or going through the drive-thrus, picking up their milkshake and then they were on their way, what the researchers learned was that the milkshake was being hired by these people to do a job. And that job was to help them to their 30, 40, 50, 60-minute long commute. It was almost a replacement of breakfast because it's very difficult to eat breakfast while you're driving. So donuts, bagels, sandwiches wouldn't work. Now, and there was a long drive. So people were hiring the milkshake, the product, to do a job, which was to quench their thirst, help them with hunger while they continue to be on their way to work. And it is not boring because one hand is to drive the car and the other hand is to drink the milkshake. So this is when this whole concept came up, that jobs to be done is really, at any point in time, your customer is hiring your product to do a job. That job is, going back to our previous discussion, the problem that they're trying to solve. So in this case, user research and customers in interviews really helped the teams understand what their problem was. And then the product manager's job comes into play, where you're now going to find a solution to their problem. In this case, the milkshake. So coming back, jobs to be done framework really is something which you want to apply as to how you're building your products. Whenever you're thinking of a new product, you think of what job is it trying to do? What problem is it trying to solve? Is this really a problem, which is the most important problem for the customer, or in this case, the milkshake drinkers, but in your case, any product. And when you figure that part out, now you have to break it down. You have to break it down into is this the main job that the customer is trying to do? Or is this a related job, which is to be accomplished in conjunction with the main job? So think of it as an example. People who were picking up the milkshake, their primary job was to, or the main task that they wanted to complete is something which was a breakfast replacement that they can eat, or essentially get nutrition because of the milk and the flavors in the milkshake. That is the main task. The related task, which they were trying to accomplish in conjunction with the main job, was that something which is easy to pick, and they continue to drive. They continue to get to their destination. They don't have to stop at a certain place to eat their breakfast. They get the nutrition while they're on their way. That's the related job. So when you think of product management, jobs to be done framework really makes sense, because now you are in a situation, you're trying to achieve something, which is your motivation. And then eventually what you're going to do is the outcome that you're going to achieve. So you can think of it in these three buckets, which is when, which is the situation you're in. The motivation in this case is I want to have something eating while I'm driving to work, which is my motivation, so that I can do, which is the outcome, which is I can feel energetic and I have a full breakfast and I'm not hungry. So my outcome is I don't want to be hungry and I still want to get to work. So this is the jobs to be done framework, which is what we want to arrive on. So again, coming back to, people do not buy your products or services because you want them to do it. They have a specific job to do. And if they can get that job done by your product is going to be a success. This actually reminds me of a quote from Henry Ford. This was back in the day when I worked at Ford Motor Company. This was a very common quote there, where a few years ago, somebody asked Henry Ford as to why he built Ford Motor Company. And essentially his response was that if I ask people what to do, they would actually tell me that they want faster horses. They would not think of using a tire or an innovation where you could get from point A to point B using a tire, which is faster than a horse. Because his point was that customers don't know what they want. All they know is what their problem is. Their problem was, I want to get to, from point A to point B faster. My job is to figure out, is it faster horses or is it something which has tires and wheels and which can actually run faster using an engine and gas, right? So that's the job to be done framework. Now, with this framework's understanding, we're going to jump into another category of the build trap, which is a fundamental flaw on how an agile team operates. So think of it as, now keep the jobs to be done framework in the back of your mind. And then now let's talk about build trap, and then we'll connect those two in the future slides. So let's say you have an agile team. It's a phenomenal team, amazing engineers, designers, researchers, product managers, and support team. Somebody in the company, somebody in that team has a great idea. So that someone says, let's say it's me. I say, hey, I think we can do this. I have great convincing skills. So I just end up convincing the rest of the team of that idea. Then now that I have an idea, now I'm going to figure out how to feed requirements into that idea so that I can write a product requirements document, and then hand it over to my engineering teams. And engineering teams will essentially create software based on that idea. So now this is great. This is a great process. It's worth talking about. But now if you take a step back and think about it, we built something because we thought it was awesome. I thought it was awesome. But what we ended up doing is we built based on an idea and fed requirements into that idea versus solving for a real problem. So what ends up happening now is that I thought somebody has a great idea and we built it, we launched it, and nobody uses it, because as product managers, our job is to solve problems. So what happened in this case, if you heard me, I used the word built a few times because that's exactly what we did. We built based on a great idea, but we did not validate the idea whether or not it's really a problem for our users, and if it is really solving anything for them. Is it really changing their behavior when we build something? So we ended up building something which nobody uses. And we saved a few cycles of engineering time, design time, research time, a bunch of time or hours with the product manager spent on writing a product requirements document. But at the end of it all, we actually didn't solve a problem. So that's the build trap that we're talking about. So now the next question comes is, how do we avoid it? There will always be great ideas, and you should always explore those great ideas. But removing the I think, which is the output concept, and leading into the discussion from a behavior standpoint is going to help you achieve the outcome you're trying to do and avoid the build trap. So this is how you do it. Going back to the same scenario, let's say a team member has a great idea. Let's say I have a great idea and say, hey, you know what? I think we should do this. Great. The first question you want to ask to the team is, what behavior do we want to achieve? What problem are we trying to solve? What value are we creating for our users? That users can be anybody. That user can be a business user, an internal team member, and ops team members, and customers, business-to-business customers. Like in automotive, we had dealerships who are business-to-business customers. So there could be a lot of different customer groups or user groups. But the question when you ask is what behavior you want to drive, that will help you achieve or at least identify what outcome you're trying to find out or what outcome you're trying to achieve. Now, take that, go to the next step and say, okay, based on the outcome, what do my users really want? Okay, now I know this is the outcome I'm trying to achieve. Do my users really want it? So look at the vision of the users. Look at how they perceive your product. Look at how they perceive your company, your brand, and see, oh, this is the vision of the brand. This is what my users really want. This is the behavior or the outcome I'm trying to achieve. Now let's map those two. So now you have aligned on the outcome and what your users really want. Now the next thing which comes in is, okay, we have done all these two things. How will we know we'll succeed? So we'll now come up with essentially business metrics, or to be honest, product metrics, which could be business metrics, which could be customer metrics. But you need to now come up with the success metrics of once your outcome is achieved, how will you know whether was it a success or not? So you arrive on that metrics. Then you come up with the sequencing, which is your strategy. So now in this flow, you may have thought about a lot of different outcomes you're trying to achieve, a bunch of different metrics, a bunch of different outputs. Now you're going to think about that, okay, what do I want to do first? Like, what does my customer really want? How easy is it to solve it? And do I have the right resourcing, which is the next piece, which is, okay, now we have figured out everything which we need to do, whatever the users really want, how will we measure success, and what sequence will follow. And that will actually be hand in glove with resourcing. So your sequencing will actually be, to some extent, be dependent on what kind of resourcing you have. But this is the process you want to follow. So now, if you think about it, you still had that great idea. You're still working on that great idea, but not just because the idea is great, is because is the idea being mapped with the outcome which our customers want. So going back to customer-driven, outcome-driven product management. So now you will be in a situation where you will not need to do the build trap, or you will not fall into the build trap. Rather, you will actually be in a much better shape, because instead of just building something because it looks awesome or feels awesome, you're actually going to build something which is going to achieve an outcome, which is going to lead to a change in human behavior by and after using your product. So that's how you avoid the build trap. And this to be honest, this is difficult. It's not as simple as this one slide shows. There is going to be a lot of work that you will need to do to arrive to this vision, to this outcome. But the best part which will happen here is that you are not going to build something just because, but you're going to really build something which will achieve an outcome for your users, for your customers. So now we have talked about two concepts. Concept number one, jobs to be done framework. Concept number two, build trap and how to avoid. Now, how do we put it all together? So that's when I usually use this matrix or this prioritization approach, which I call it as a problem prioritization matrix. This is very interesting because a lot of times as product managers, we tend to prioritize based on effort and estimate, which is great. You know what amount of time it's going to take to build something. You know the number of hours or weeks, how many engineering cycles, how many design cycles, how, things like that. So you're really looking at the estimate of work, and you're looking at the impact, which is, hey, this is going to achieve this impact. It's going to lead to, going back to the example of subscription models or loyalty programs. Hey, it's going to lead us to 10% increase subscription, or 5% increase in renewals, which is great. But now you're not really still focusing on the end outcome. So what you want to start doing is you want to apply this model, which is problem prioritization matrix, to your thinking. You will still be doing severity mapping. You'll still be looking at metrics, but you're going to start you should absolutely put outcome in your prioritization matrix. It says, hey, this is the outcome that I'm trying to achieve. And then also ask yourself the question that this outcome is being achieved by a customer accomplishing a job, which is going back to they are hiring your product to do something for them. They are not hiring your product just for the sake of it. So what job is the user trying to accomplish should be a component in your prioritization matrix. And then you list out all the problems as well. So now if you look at it, there's a problem bucket in which you list out what problem is the customer having, the job, which is what job will they accomplish, the outcome which you will achieve or which they will achieve after the product has been implemented, the severity of the problem that they're trying to solve. This will help you achieve the main task and the secondary task, which we talked about earlier, and then individual metrics to measure the outcome. So now you have a problem prioritization matrix at your disposal, and this will help you put it all together. So what I would suggest you all to do is ask the below questions to yourself all the time. First, ask them this question about, did I identify the objective of the user? Did I frame this when I am doing my prioritization? Did I frame this objective, this feature, this idea in the lens of problem? Or did I put it in the feature lens? If you put it in the feature lens, then take a step back and say, okay, this is a great feature. Is this feature worth implementing? Is this feature really going to be useful? Is this feature what the customers will use? And what will this feature do for them? Is it going to do anything for them? And if you get an answer that is, yeah, it's going to solve this problem, that's when you have done it right, because now you're focusing on the outcome. You're really trying to solve a problem for the customer. So now you have put your feature lens into a problem thinking approach. And now you can say that, okay, we are not just a delivery team who builds a bunch of features, falls in the build trap, and then implements and launches things which we end up not seeing enough usage, versus we now really are solving for our customers, really putting everything in the problem lens, really coming up with an outcome and the objective which the problem will solve, how the problem will be solved, and measuring that solution in different metrics versus just the features. Definitely ask them this question. Ask yourself this question as, what jobs are the users trying to do by hiring the product? Are they buying the product? Are they just using it? Are they actually subscribing to it? And these three are three different things. If somebody is just subscribing to your product, then you have a different product model. Just like, let's say, Apple Music. You're subscribing, Apple TV or Apple Movies. You're subscribing to something for a certain duration. The user is watching movies, listening to music, and then moving on. But why are they subscribing to it is the answer to the question of what job the user is trying to do. Using, same thing. Buying, something similar, but again, this would be more of a one-time purchase, which is, hey, I bought this particular phone because I wanted to, make sure my data is secure and so I bought an iPhone. Or, you're buying a product, or you booked an Airbnb because you want to really stay in that unique looking property, or you bought this product from Amazon because it's solving a problem for you as a user. Then the next thing which comes in is your solution going to do that job? So now you've identified the objective, you looked in the problem lens, you've identified the job. Now look at what your solution is. What are you going to do? Is it going to achieve the job and solve the problem? If yes, then the last thing will come is, how will I measure the change in user behavior? Now, this change in user behavior can actually be what we talked about earlier. Is it could be, hey, we're getting more and more renewals of our membership, or hey, customers keep coming back to our website and buying more, or hey, they are abandoning our competitors and coming to our website for listening to music. So in a simple example, it could be Spotify versus Amazon Music versus Apple Music, and a user may be doing one over the other. So it is changing their behavior because maybe you added more content to your music product, or you had better properties on your Airbnb product, or you had better inventory on your Overstock product. So once you're figuring out answering these questions, it will go back and you will really know that, okay, now I can put it in this bucket of problem prioritization. And then I would have avoided the build trap. I put it all together. I know what outcome I'm achieving. And this will help me build products which really customers love, use, talk about it, subscribe to, tell their friends and family, and almost create fans of the products, because that's what eventually you want to do. You want to create customers who love your product, not just like them, not just use it, but really love it. And somebody will love your product only when it does something emotionally for them. Because for every problem, there is one functional aspect, right? That every single, that because of the competition, there could be tons of different products which can solve the customer's problem. But then there is the second aspect of when the user behavior change, which you're talking about, will come in, when there is an emotional connection somebody will have with your product. So, as an example, if you are, let's say you are traveling and you take airline A versus airline B. Airline A is usually on time. There is usually has direct flights. They have good in-flight entertainment. Their staff is very nice. While airline B is a few of those things, but it's usually always late, or they don't have enough in-flight entertainment, and it takes up too much of your time to deal with them. Which one would you pick? They're both doing the job for you because you want to go from point A to point B and you want to fly, and they're doing it for you. But if airline A is giving you something more, which I as a user will, let's say, start loving, then I will start, my affinity will start moving to that airline's products. I might invest more money in their stock. I might invest in their credit cards. I might invest in their loyalty program. I might invest in their miles program. While airline A, I would be like, oh, okay, if I don't get anything from the airline that I love, then I will go to this one because I don't have an option. I still have to go. So it will still it will still help me do my job, but I won't love to do it. So that's why when you think of problems, when you think of what job it is solving, always also think of the functional aspect and the emotional aspect of your product. What emotion is your product deriving? Because that will lead to a much bigger change in user behavior versus your product being the second best option if the first one didn't work out. So I know we have talked a lot of things today. Thank you very much for listening to me today. And I would love if you all want to reach out to me, feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm happy to answer more questions and help out with anything which you want to do in your product career. I can be, again, my name is Pratik. I currently work at Airbnb. This is my LinkedIn handle, and I would look forward to connect with you more. Thank you.